Hi, this is Congressman Randy Nagelbauer. Welcome to the Empowerment Project. The founders of this country intended for America to be a nation of empowerment, where people were free to work hard and enjoy the fruits of their labor, as well as a nation where you are personally responsible for your own destiny. Each week, I sit down with policymakers to discuss the ways we can make America less dependent on the federal government. With me today is Scott Hodge, who is president of the Tax Foundation. The Tax Foundation works to educate taxpayers about tax policies and the size of tax borne by Americans. And so, Scott, thanks for being with us today.
Well, it's a great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You know, Scott, one of the things we talk about on this project is, how we can empower America and move America back to what the founders really intended for us to do. And one of the things that happens in policy that can be either empowering or entitling is our tax policy. And I know that your organization has done a lot of studying about that. Could you kind of talk to us a little bit about some of your recent findings?
Well, over the last few decades, we've seen tax breaks become so generous for so many people that it's literally knocked millions of people off the tax rolls. Once upon a time, only the poorest Americans were essentially held harmless for taxes. We would have great personal deductions or standard deduction or personal exemptions, and that would protect poor people from the income tax. But today, the amount of credits and deductions that have been put into the tax code over the last two decades is staggering. And so we have literally tens of millions of people who pay no income taxes after filling out all their credits and deductions. In fact, during the most recent tax year, 52 million Americans paid zero income taxes because of the generosity of all the credits and deductions that are in the code. That's about 36% of all the taxpayers in America. Now, when you add on top of them all the people who don't file a tax return because they don't earn enough money, now we're looking at almost half the American population is essentially outside of the tax system. They, as you like to put it, are sitting in the wagon, and they have no skin in the game. They're not paying anything toward the basic cost of government. In fact, most of those people are receiving a lot of generous subsidies through refundable credits. In fact, last year, the IRS handed out about $70 billion in refundable credits to people who pay no income taxes whatsoever.
When I saw that number, it was staggering. 70 billion people that paid no tax but got $70 billion in tax rebates back, or not rebates, but basically, I guess, a check from the government, from other taxpayers.
Well, Congressman, we've, over the decades now, turned the IRS into what I call an ATM machine for welfare benefits. We've made it part of the welfare system. And now there are millions of people who look at April 15th as payday, not tax day, because you have the IRS now acting as a sugar daddy, dispensing checks in the thousands of dollars to people who essentially pay no income taxes whatsoever.
One of the things when we use that wagon analogy, we talk about the people that are riding in the wagon, but more importantly, what we need to be talking about is the people pulling the wagon and the disincentive that it becomes where the heavy tax burden on our small businesses all across America, these increased tax loads, where it's a disincentive for people to go out and to innovate and create new jobs and take risk because more and more of their fruits of their reward is taken away by the government.
Well, it's a great point. In fact, because we've knocked so many people off the tax rolls, we have a shrinking group of people at the top who are paying all the nation's tax bills. In fact, the top 1% of taxpayers in America pays a greater share of the income tax burden than the bottom 95% combined. That means that the top 1% is paying a greater share than 119 million of their neighbors combined. That's how disjointed the tax system has become. In fact, the international organization, the OECD in Paris, which studies global fiscal trends, finds that the United States has the most progressive tax system among all the industrialized nations. In fact, the top 10% of taxpayers in the United States pays a heavier tax burden than any other group in any other country across the globe. And our poor people actually have the lowest tax burden of any industrialized country. That's how disjointed things have become, because we have laden so many tax breaks in the code aimed at the middle class and lower income people.
Scott, thanks for being on the program. I hope you'll come back, because I think it's very important that we look at making revisions in our tax code so we can get back to a nation of empowerment and get away from this entitlement and using our tax code to foster that. It's hard for families and small businesses to make decisions when they don't know what they will face as far as taxes. And in just a few weeks, the country will have one of the largest tax increases in our history, because many of the tax cuts will be expiring, as you know. Thanks again to my special guest, Scott Hodge from the Tax Foundation, for joining us today. To learn more about the Empowerment Project, I encourage you to visit my website at randy.house.gov and click on the Empowerment button. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Congressman Randy Nagelbauer, and this has been the Empowerment Project.